A new violent video game has hit the streets, and we need to get rid of it before it warps any children with its bloops and bleeps.
But that game sounds awesome.
And therefore should be destroyed.
Okay, so like many disturbed children who definitely shouldn't have, I did grow up watching The Simpsons from a very young age. It was a show I always watched around dinner time, either on TV or from my excessive 4-episode DVD collection. I remember specifically the deal that my mom and I had was that if I had a bath before I went to bed, I was allowed to watch Homer trying to kill his entire family. I was not, however, allowed to ever touch Grand Theft Auto, aside from the occasional cheeky glimpse at a friend's house. Unlike kids nowadays, who I think get to play it before they even make it out of the womb. So for me, and I'm sure for many, many others, this was the next best thing. Because Lego City Undercover hadn't come out yet. Hit and Run just constantly eluded me no matter how hard I tried. For me, it was that one game that a few of my friends owned that was always the highlight of a trip to their house. And it was also at a family friend's beach house that we went to every now and then that was the only game on the original Xbox they had that was worth playing. That just made going there just that little extra bit special. Even the Blockbuster I used to borrow all my games from didn't have it. Although they did have The Simpsons Road Rage, and discovering that you can't even get out of your car in that game was the first time I realized what the real world felt like. And so when I finally tracked it down at a retro game store like 5 or so years ago, after I was obsessed with finding it for so long, my quest for The Simpsons Hit and Run was finally over. And then I never even played it, because by then we kind of had this thing called a PlayStation 4. I think a lot of the 3D Simpsons games in the early 2000s all shared this pattern of wanting to parody successful franchises at the time, and maybe shared a few too many similarities with them sometimes. But I think Hit and Run is easily the best at its job in that department, because I would wager it's even better than GTA, because GTA doesn't let you beat up small children. So I thought it was about time that I finally play Hit and Run and see if it was worth all of that hype in my childhood. And so we should probably start where the game does. The very first level of the game is the only one I know super well, because this is where I spent all of my time as a kid doing pretty much the exact same thing I'm doing now. Kick wife. Apparently even Matt Groening spent all of his time when testing this game beating up Marge, so really it's tradition that every new Hit and Run player becomes a violent criminal within a minute of booting up the game. This opening level is really just there to get you started and introduce you to the mechanics of the game, where you'll be completely ignoring the missions and instead doing horrible things to every person you come across. Despite its very obvious Grand Theft Auto inspiration, Hit and Run has 3 different maps that get reused for 4 of its 7 total levels instead of doing an open world. But each of these is filled with so much random shit for you to do, even if most of my time as a kid was spent running over innocent people. Because it's not like other pussy GTA clones where you can't even run over people because they'll always jump out of the way. Hit and Run lets you bowl over as many people as you want. I love the attention to detail on every map, which is made so much more endearing with the variety of areas you can get to, especially considering how many of them are faithful recreations of things from the show. Aside from the game's story missions, which we'll get to, there are races you can do and other collectibles for you to chase down, like Buzz Cola cards that unlock a bonus multiplayer minigame at the end where you can customize your own races to your liking, which I didn't even know was in the game until now. You can enter around 1 or 2 certain buildings in each level, like the Quickie Mart and Moe's Tavern, to buy your character new costumes. But the real highlight for me, though, were the secret vehicles hidden in each level, which I think as a kid I thought finding was the greatest possible thing I was ever going to accomplish. You can't get these from the phone boxes scattered around levels that let you spawn in any other car you unlock. These can only be found in their specific levels, which made them that much more special to me. The only one I ever found was the rocket car in level 1 that would explode in about 2.5 seconds of hitting the acceleration button. Much like all of the other cars on the road, they're not really very well suited for using in missions and are more just there for you to dick around with in free play, but you bet you're still probably gonna try anyway. The others are all hidden in these really clever little spots, and I can only imagine how amazing it must have felt to actually stumble upon these by accident instead of looking it up on YouTube like me. The driving in this game is obviously the highlight. It is still extremely fun and controls super well. Sliding around corners and whipping your car around after reversing is incredibly satisfying, and I am happy to say that I haven't gotten any better at it than when I was 7 years old. Every vehicle has its own stats and handling, so unfortunately you do get some really shit ones, but you can unlock extra vehicles by completing those additional races or just buying certain ones outright, with there being 6 different ones in each level. Though honestly, the default car they give you for each stage is perfectly fine to get the job done for the whole time if you want. The problem with that though is the hit and run meter. Unfortunately, while they add in all of this really fun stuff on the map for you to destroy, they also went in and put in a system that punishes you for hitting any of it. The cops in this game used to scare the shit out of me. It's not like in GTA where a few show up and gradually increase in difficulty so you can have an epic shootout. The second you fill up that bar, an unstoppable death squad comes after you, hell-bent on making every mission in the game 10 times harder. I mean, unless this is some kind of meta joke, because they literally implemented the fun police. Getting hit by them only takes 50 coins from you and then they disappear. But the real consequence is how many times they can screw you over during crucial missions later in the game because of the way they just spawn in from literally nowhere. I think it would be fine if it was just in free play, but I really wish they didn't carry over into the missions too, which believe me are already plenty stressful enough. Are you fucking kidding? If the game didn't want me to cause so much destruction, then they shouldn't have made smashing into stuff so fun, okay? You can also hop into any moving cars on the map, but you don't really steal them. You just kind of slide into the passenger seat. Look, vehicular manslaughter we can do, but stealing is too far, okay? I always interpreted this as the Simpsons possessing random people to give them the absolute worst driving skills known to man. Just like in real life, excessively smashing your car into stationary objects does in fact cause long-standing damage, and if you smash up your car enough, it'll explode and take some of your coins and also the original driver of the car with it. One thing I always loved about this game is that it still lets you drive the empty husk of the car afterwards. It goes so unbelievably slow that there's literally no point, but I always just loved that you could. Each of the levels have 7 missions with an additional optional one, and they range from driving to the Quickie Mart to get some ice cream and returning it to Marge, to other menial tasks like murdering 3 innocent people because Bart wants to buy a video game. A surprising amount of these are just running dumb errands for people because I guess the Simpsons family are just the most generous people alive and everyone in Springfield is a lazy asshole.
Chief Wiggum, I need you to find out what happened to Bart.
I'd love to help, but I got sugar withdrawal real bad.
These tasks put you through races, collectathons, and trailing missions, which are a little more bearable than they would be in other games because at least you get to see the AI somehow being an even shittier driver than you. What's annoying though is that some of these missions require you to go around the map and collect a ludicrously high number of coins so you can buy a vehicle or costume you need as a prerequisite sometimes, because I guess the devs needed a way to make the game longer. They make you do this twice in Apu's level, one after the other, which is why level 5 took me longer than 1 and 2 combined, even though it turns out that the mission you need the costume for has you in a car the whole time, so why the fuck? I think my favorite were the destroy missions though, where you get to literally murder people for mildly inconveniencing you. Although sometimes it's a bit imprecise when your collisions actually register, because sometimes hitting them does literally nothing at all, and other times it takes out nearly their entire health bar in one go. The game's occasional jankiness can help you just as much as it fucks you up, because sometimes they can even just drive into incoming traffic and kill themselves. Hit and Run has this really weird difficulty spike around like the midpoint of the game, where each of the levels at that point just have this one mission that's just way harder than all of the other ones for some reason. In some of the later missions, it really is just a matter of getting lucky with the traffic sometimes, because everyone in Springfield drives like they're on meth. This game really isn't lenient with time. There's no like items you can grab to extend the time limit or anything. If you spin out for too long or don't make it far enough past a certain point, you're more or less fucked and gonna have to restart. And yes, while this does make the very few times where you just barely make it before the timer runs out feel incredible, even with all of the shortcuts throughout the maps you eventually memorize, I swear the traffic is programmed to always show up when it is most inconvenient for you, especially in the later levels. Oh my god. Some of the missions in this game are downright brutal though. Like this one with Apu where you have to follow a garbage truck that drops 5 trash cans, and then you have to run around the map collecting another 25, with some of it being on foot for some reason, and then with your remaining timer somehow still make it halfway across the map, which I don't think is physically achievable by a human being. The amount of absolute bullshit that can happen to you when you're just about to beat a level, I am convinced has to be unparalleled in any other game. The 3 hardest missions in the game are generally considered to be in the 5th, 6th, and 7th levels, even as according to the Simpsons Hit and Run wiki, with the first being that aforementioned Apu one, the second being Set to Kill, mission 6 of level 6 with Bart, where you're given the most easily breakable car in any video game ever made, and then tasked with having to chase down 25 laser stands through the most crowded spot in the entire game, where you're practically guaranteed to get a hit and run and have the cops fuck you up at every given opportunity, and then you still have to drive all the way back to where you started within 50 seconds, and I'm sure this mission might actually be fun if you didn't have Springfield's finest trying to assassinate you, but of course both of these pale in comparison to the dreaded final mission. This is so notoriously difficult that a lot of the time my research on the game kept coming up with results about how impossibly hard this final level is. For some reason they thought that adding in nuclear waste for you to carry that will cause you to immediately explode if you drive into anything too hard was a fun idea. So this one requires you to race an alien car all the way to the power plant, then grab a barrel and drive all the way back to the school without hitting anything too hard, while also outrunning another alien car and also the police, and all of this within a very strict time limit, and I'm only 10 years old and I just want to beat the game, okay?
Why did we go to Earth Heaven when we died?
Well, at least we don't have to sit through the stupid video game credits. No!
When I was looking this game up, I learned that Hit and Run actually had a pretty rushed development cycle, and there were a lot of things they had to cut to get the game done in time. They were meant to be full-on boss fights that were supposed to conclude some levels, which are still present in cutscenes like the Truckosaurus in level 2 or the dinosaur skeleton in level 5, which would have been awesome, as well as an entire area of the final stage that was meant to be accessible. I mean, it's obvious the game didn't need all of that extra stuff to be a huge success, but it still would have been cool to see what it all could have been like. Honestly, Hit and Run is perfectly fine to me as it is in terms of how much stuff there is to do. But learning how pressed for time the devs were does explain, for example, why like getting into some vehicles doesn't have an animation, so it just fades to black instead. Or how you can't even jump out of a car and instead have to come to a complete stop, which honestly as a kid I always thought was a way of promoting driver safety. Now, the plot of Hit and Run is weird. Each level of the game sees you uncovering a gradually unfolding mystery about Springfield that begins with Homer becoming suspicious of these new wasp cameras scattered throughout the map for you to beat up, which design-wise feel like they're from a totally different game. In level 2, you take control of Bart, who, like his sister, is freakishly huge for some reason. He spends his level trying to buy a video game, but ends up getting arrested and then abducted by aliens. So then in the third stage, you play as Lisa trying to find him.
I need to find my stupid brother.
I'm still extremely surprised that the ESRB, with all of their usual pedantic guidelines, had no issue with an 8-year-old driving a car. Then in level 4, you play as Marge, who, upon noticing that something is a bit off about Bart, discovers that both the cola and the wasps are being used by Kang and Kodos to make all of the residents of Springfield go crazy, which I'm using as an excuse for their driving.
These aliens have been secretly filming an intergalactic reality show in Springfield.
I knew there was a simple explanation.
The biggest curveball is Apu in level 5, because I guess even for this game, having a baby drive a car was pushing it. But this quest to literally save the entire town and everybody in it is regularly interrupted, so you can do things like collect diapers for Dr. Hibbert.
Excuse me, Hans Mole Man. Can you help me?
I'm hiding from the police.
And then for levels 6 and 7, you get Bart and Homer again as the cola somehow causes zombies and ghosts to appear for a final Treehouse of Horror level. Because the boss fights had to be cut out, some of these story cutscenes can feel kind of disconnected from the rest of the game, especially with the aforementioned Truckosaurus, which just kind of shows up for a few seconds at the end of level 2, but doesn't actually appear anywhere in the game. But the story is made much more enjoyable by all of the punchy dialogue coming from many returning voice actors from the show.
Sorry, Bart. I can't serve booze to a minor. It ain't right.
I'm here to buy fireworks.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now, before we wrap things up, let's talk about the cheats, which took up like most of the time I actually did get to play this game as a kid, because Hit and Run does a really good job at giving you a bunch of useless bullshit for you to mess around with. There's an invincibility and insta-kill cheat that lets you take revenge on all of the horrible things that traffic did to you throughout the game. And there's also a way to increase the speed of your car and enable a speedometer, and a brick car that takes the place of all the secret vehicles in each level that I assume was used for testing that they kindly left in the game for us. And there's a drunk driving cheat, which... why? My favorite one is definitely the car horn jump that lets you press the right bumper to send your car hurtling halfway across the map, and definitely doesn't break the game at all and functions entirely as intended. So, all up, what began as a parody of GTA with the Simpsons characters became a game that's now so beloved for its ability to let you run over droves of small children that people are frequently clamoring for it to be remade even now, or even making incredible mods or remakes themselves as recently as like this month. I'm pretty confident we'll eventually get a remaster of it in some form after Fox finally stops making money off of The Simpsons Tapped Out. Considering how passionate both the fans and even the creators are about it, it's bound to happen at some point. But for now, even despite its flaws, I will still always want to come back to this game so I can kick the shit out of everyone in Springfield. Thanks for watching. Also thanks to the top patrons of the month: Buttermaster, Enderpigman9, Jake, Matthew 11045, Primal, Reggie Shilji, and that one doofus. Okay, see ya.